Hello and welcome to U plus AI's YouTube channel called Startup Reports. I am Ranga, and in this channel, I review products and solutions from startups that are at the intersection of healthcare and artificial intelligence. I am doing a COVID-19 special series now, where I look at solutions from startups to manage various aspects of pandemic diseases like COVID-19. In this episode, we'll take a look at Onfido. So what does Onfido do? Well, Onfido is basically in the business to digitally prove people's real identities using a photo ID and facial biometrics. Now, think of it like this, right? When you show up at the airport to do a check-in, the person at the counter takes a look at your passport and first verifies whether the passport is genuine. Then he or she looks at you and tries to match your face with the face on the passport to make sure that you are the right person carrying the passport. Now, imagine this had to be done, um, like, say, on a kiosk or at a terminal where there was no human. Now, you would first present the ID. So, first, the ID would be checked whether it's genuine. It's a genuine government issued ID, be a passport or driver's license or what have you. Then it would have to be ascertained that the person presenting the photo ID is indeed the real person who's supposed to carry that photo ID. So in some ways, the machine or the terminal has to make sure that there's a real human person there, and then he is the person authorized to hold that ID. So this is the whole problem that Onfido is trying to solve. It's basically trying to prove the real identity, right? Of course, using a photo ID and checking the liveness of the person. Now, there are different layers to it. As I said, first the document that is presented is checked whether the document is valid or not. Then comes, you know, to identify the person, whether the person's biometrics match up with the photo on the ID. So somewhere checking that, are you the real person holding the ID? That's the second part. So that's one more level of security. And yet further is solution has to check the liveness of the person. So which means that you have to ask the person to do something, right? Maybe look left, look right, or solve a puzzle right in front of the camera, so that the kind of system knows that, there's a real person and he's coming to present an ID, and that's how it's checked. So this is called liveness checking. And so basically Onfido provides all of these, and these are increasing levels of security that are provided by a solution that Onfido offers. So let's look at how Onfido achieves this. Of course, the basic thing of document verification is to basically check the number, check probably the barcode, check whether the document presented has an expiry date, whether it's a forged document or an original document or an expired one. I think that's kind of a basic one. The biometric part is when it sort of asks you to take a selfie of yourself and compares the biometric points on your face with the biometric points on the photo ID that you have presented, and by that it sort of makes sure that you are the right person. The further to that is like what we talked about earlier, right? How do you check the liveness of a person? So to do that, basically, the Onfido solution will ask you to do certain exercises in front of the camera and take a video of you. And these exercises are like, maybe it'll just like I've shown it on the slide, it'll just ask you to take a look to the left and back, or, say each of these numbers aloud. So by that, it's ascertaining that there is a real person, behind this ID, and it tries to match the real person and the ID. And of course, to prevent somebody taking a video of doing this and presenting it to the solution itself, these checks are random. Like, it could be a puzzle, it could be a mathematical puzzle, it could be a simple thing like move your neck up and down, or move your face from left to right, or make a pout with your lips. It could be any of these. There are, what Onfido says is there are over 4,000 combinations of randomized actions. So fraudsters can't really cheat the system with pre-recorded videos, right? So that's how Onfido sort of achieves this. And of course, behind all of this is really machine learning, computer vision, technology to really make all of this sort of make all of this work at scale, and make all of this work fast enough so that it's viable for somebody using the system, right? And they don't have to keep waiting for the system to get back with a response, whether you're valid and whether you're allowed further entrance to whatever that you're going through. All right, maybe your flight, or maybe a train station, or maybe you're entering your workplace. All of this sort of fits in at that point. So Onfido is in this business of basically proving your digital identity with your physical one and sort of tying both together. So then you ask, no, they have been really recently in the news regarding COVID-19, and there's been a lot of talk about how countries will open up such that they can open up the economy, they can allow people to go back to work, even though the SARS-CoV-2 virus is not out of the universe. There's no vaccine yet, but still there needs to be a way for people to go out and contribute their part to the economy and the country. So how could you do that? Now, the way you could do that is via an immunity passport. An immunity passport essentially means that somebody who's, somebody, let's say, who's been infected with COVID-19 and recovered, that means they have the antibodies to fight the virus should they have a reinfection again. So which means their antibody test will be positive. And once they have recovered, obviously their test for the virus will be negative. And in such a case, they could get sort of a digital passport or a pass that will probably be on their phone or retrievable on the phone. And what that helps them to do is really it's like an immunity passport. It allows them to go back into society and do what they were doing in terms of work, or essential services, or however you may call it. Of course, until the time there is a vaccine, there's a vaccine, and most of the population has been inoculated. Until that time, you need these people to go out and work, because that will keep things moving in the country. So that's what an immunity passport is. And now you can kind of tie in that Onfido has been in the news because they've been sort of working on how to tie in the immunity passport with their identity solution. There has been news that they've been talking to some European governments and maybe even the US government to see how this immunity passport can tie in along with their digital identity solution. So that's why they're in the news, and that's an important functionality should it come to bear. So what's my take? Now think about what happens if you don't have an immunity passport. Now we've all heard of someone being a flight risk, right? I mean, so they're not allowed on flights, they're stopped at the gates and all that. I think we're going to enter an era where somebody could be deemed as a public health risk, right? So essentially people who don't have an immunity passport, who have either not been infected, or they don't have the required concentration of antibodies in their system, or they are currently having the virus. So all those people don't have an immunity passport, which means that they are deemed as a public health risk. And what does that mean? That means they can't be allowed back into crowded public spaces, be it malls or conferences, or sports venues, stadiums, cinema theaters, bars, and even workplaces may mandate that only those with immunity passports can come into the office buildings, because otherwise it poses a public health risk. So as they say, we are entering interesting times as we come out of the lockdown due to the pandemic. Then, if there can be immunity passports, I think we really need to think about, can there be immunity fraud, right? And again, I don't know the full details of it. This is something that just struck me, and I thought I'll share it with you. Is that, imagine if somebody has never been infected, right? But then they wanted to go back to work, or they wanted to go back to some kind of a public event. And what they do is they basically get antibodies transfused into their blood, from somebody who has recovered from the infection. So they never got an infection. It's just that they somehow managed to get the plasma of a person who's been infected and recovered, and they kind of transfuse them into their blood. So, in some sense, they do have the immunity because they have the antibodies and they are not infected, which means the virus test will be negative. So, which means they can get the immunity passport, and then which means they can go out into society. But would you deem that as fraud or not? I'm not sure, but I just wanted to put that question out. Um, I don't even know if the immunity passport will detect, you know, just detect that these presence of antibodies. But the fact that the antibodies came from somebody else or they were generated by my own body, I don't know if such a difference or a distinguishing feature can be made. And though I put it out there, I don't even know if such a case would be called as an immunity fraud. But that's just some food for thought for all of us. All right. So, yep. Thank you. That was about Onfido. If you like this perspective, please go to my YouTube video and like it on the channel. Do connect with me, Rangaprasad Sampath, on LinkedIn, and do follow my online handle U Plus AI on Twitter, SoundCloud, and Medium. Thank you. Enjoy yourself, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.